you're gonna break into. On you.
Talking Boxing with Billy C. It began as a podcast, went live on the net, and transformed into a full-blown empire. Across the web, on Fight Now TV, and on radio stations around the world. It's the only daily boxing talk radio show on the planet, hosted by the only guy with the balls to do it. Many have stepped into the ring. Many have tried to take the belt. And one by one, they've fallen. Another victim of the undisputed heavyweight champion of boxing talk radio. Talking Boxing with Billy C. is on now.
My style is impetuous, my defense is impregnable, and I'm just ferocious. I want your heart.
And we're coming to you live from the Billy C studio in Lake George, New York. I'm Bill Calogero, and it's time for Talking Boxing with Billy C. Good morning, good day, good evening, whenever you're listening. Hope you're doing all right. Special shout-out goes to the WMML listeners in Glens Falls, New York. What's up, WMML? Glad you guys could join us. Before we get started, I got to say, the show is being brought to you in part by Cats Nationwide Luxury Transportation Service. If you're looking for a limo and you're someplace in the United States, even Canada, and you want a really hot driver driving you around, well, you got to give Cat a call. My girl, Cat. 202-351-7496. Cats Nationwide Luxury Transportation Service. Tell her Billy C sent you, but remember, she's my girl. 202-351-7496. The show is also being brought to you in part by Campanaro and Tomkovich. If you're looking for a lawyer, use the ones that keep my ass out of trouble. That is Campanaro and Tomkovich. 845-221-4099 with offices all around the world. 845-221-4099. Let Campanaro and Tomkovich knock out your legal problem. 845-221-4099. The show is also being brought to you in part by my friends over at the Halftime Bar and Grill, Route 9, South Glens Falls. Hear that, WMML listeners? Check it out if you haven't been to the Halftime. You've been missing out, man. Great people, great food. The food is fantastic there. Drink specials all the time, and live entertainment Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. That's right. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. There's always live entertainment there. Check it out. Right on Route 9. You can give them a call, 518-792-4869. That's 518-792-4869. Halftime Bar and Grill, South Glens Falls. And remember, if you like hot wings and you want to try the Billy C hot sauce, that's right, we got our own hot sauce there at the Halftime. You got to ask Craig to make it. He's the only one with the secret recipe. And you let me know what you think. Billy at Talkin' Boxing, TalkinBoxing.com. Halftime Bar and Grill, Route 9, South Glens Falls. The show is also being brought to you in part by Ringside, the best in boxing. Check them out at ringside.com for all of your boxing equipment needs. That goes to all the boxers, trainers, wannabes, anybody that needs some boxing equipment. There's only one place to go, ringside.com. Tell them Billy C sent you and demand the Billy C discount. Busy show scheduled for today. We got the Blast from the Past coming up. My man Alex Papali. Now, I picked a guy that we've done in the past, but I just felt like talking about him again. And you know, Tony Treem does the heavyweight spotlight, and I usually save the heavyweights for my man Tony. But Tony and I, our next episode of the heavyweight spotlight, which is next week, we'll be picking up where we left off on the John L. Sullivan debate, and we'll be discussing John L., my man Tony and myself. But today we're going to be talking about my man, one of my favorite fighters, Jack Johnson. That's right. Alex Papali and myself are going to be talking about former world champion, boxing Hall of Famer, in my opinion, one of the top 10 all-time greatest fighters ever, Jack Johnson. So we'll be talking about him. Don't forget about our New York sports show, Saturday mornings from 8 to 10, live right here on BillyCBoxing.com. And for all the WMML listeners, guess what? You get to listen to it on WMML on Sundays from 9 to 11, just before your NFL day kicks off. So make sure you mark that down. So all my listeners on 1230 WMML, make sure that you know that not only can you listen to the boxing show that you're listening to right now, but you can also listen to the Talkin' New York Sports with Billy C. and Brooklyn Mikey Sunday mornings. So check that one out. And for all of our listeners, make sure you go back to the forum, man. The forum's got some great stuff going on. Start a thread, comment on a thread, do something. www.BillyCBoxing.com under the forum. So, hey, and don't forget about voting. You know, we got a really good poll question. It's close right now. Do you think Vladimir Klitschko is going to lose his title in the ring, or do you think he's going to retire on his own terms? That's the question. Go cast your vote right now on BillyCBoxing.com. And one more thing, we got the Billy C Challenge going hot and heavy right now. They made a new program, a really nice one, as a matter of fact, for the Billy C Challenge. But as is the case with all new software, there's a couple of bugs in it. So anybody that's involved, now we have a bunch of people already involved. Now you can sign up at any time. The way this is set up is once you get a certain amount of fights, you're eligible anyway for the monthly prizes and, of course, the grand prize at the end of the year. So cast your emails right now on who is going to win. Here's the fights, because we're not doing a live show tomorrow or Friday. So here's the fights that we have on the challenge this week. Randy Caballero against Manuel Roman. We also have Roberto Ortiz against Florenzio Castellano. Richard Gutierrez against Gilberto Ramirez. Alan Sanchez against Manuel Lavella. Robert Stiglitz against Arthur Abraham, big fight over in Europe. And Jan Zavik against Shurzobek Alimadjanov. And you know I just destroyed that name. So just punch up Jan Zavik. I'll now announce these fights again a little bit later in the show for people that are tuning in a little bit later. But cast your votes. Who's going to win in all these fights? The Caballero versus Roman. Roberto Ortiz against Florenzio Castellano. Richard Gutierrez against Gilberto Ramirez. Alan Sanchez against Manuel Lavella. Stiglitz against Abraham. Jan Zavik against Ali Manjanov. So check those out. Email me your picks, Billy at TalkinBoxing, TalkinBoxing.com. Hey, look for a new couple of shows. We're adding, we're adding a half a dozen. We got a bunch of shows all coming up. They're going to be added soon. The first one is going to be a totally Spanish-speaking show, which we're real excited to join our family. My man Cesar Hernandez and George Dominguez host it. It's Noche de Boxeo Radio. And I probably said it wrong. It's Noche de Boxeo Radio. I don't speak fluent Spanish, so you look for that one. You'll be able to listen to it live and the replays right on BillyCBoxing.com. All right, as we do every day, we're going to read some emails from the mailbag. Got it. And I got a debate going on here that we're going to really get into with you guys, listeners. You know, I actually have really become really looking forward to these comments from you guys, and I'm glad that especially the regular contributors, and I'm glad that so many people take the time to drop us an email and let us know what they think, whether it's pro or con of our opinions or whatever. But sometimes we spark some debates, and we let you guys direct the show, like we did with the all-time great middleweight debate, which all started with the discussions of Bernard Hopkins, and it seems to be continuing on. And you know, as this show goes on, I'm going to ask you guys a question. Do you think that I'm starting to soften up to Bernard Hopkins? You know, a lot of the listeners kept pounding away with the Mayweather thing. All of a sudden, I started looking at Mayweather a little differently. Could it be happening with Bernard Hopkins? Well, let's see how this show unfolds, and you tell me. First and foremost, the first one we got Big Bad Basha says in response to the Holyfield show the other day, says Holyfield is going to get seriously hurt. You know, it's a shame that he continues his career. There's nothing really left for him to prove. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, and I agree with Big Bad Basha. Because it is a shame, and you know, for the most part, it seems like the powers that be in the sport of boxing are protecting him from himself, and hopefully that'll continue. I know one thing that's going to continue this show right after this next break. I got to give a shout out to my man Jay. J-Man just popped into the chat room. We'll be right back.
If you're in upstate New York and you need a trucking company, then you need Rosselli Enterprises. Rosselli Enterprises is trucking at its finest. They have it all. Dump trucks, dump trailers, walk-in floors, flatbeds, flowboys, tankers, loaders, and a full line of roll-off containers for any job, big or small. Rosselli Enterprises is also the source for all your sand, gravel, and topsoil needs. Visit them on the web at RosselliTrucking.com or call 315-433-5115. That's 315-433-5115 and tell them Billy C sent you.
Are you ready, America? Then let's get it on with Fight Now TV. It's time, fight fans. Your channel has arrived. All the fights, all the names, all the action. From world-class boxing events to mixed martial arts showdowns and other combat sports matchups, Fight Now TV delivers the hits and more. Call your television provider and tell them you want to get it on with Fight Now TV. For more details, go to fightnow.com.
We've got a great matchup tonight. Fighting out of the left corner is the #1 ranked contender.
No, he is not.
I'm sorry, but who are you?
I am the IDO computer. I am programmed to provide only fair and unbiased boxing rankings. This fighter is the number 15 ranked contender.
Fair and unbiased boxing rankings? That's a new concept.
Actually, it is not. The IDO has provided unbiased computerized rankings for many years.
Well, we've still got a great fight tonight, folks. In the left corner is the number 15 ranked contender.
The IBO, the champion of integrity. Learn more at IBOBoxing.com.
Check out BillyCBoxing.com now, or feel the wrath of the mighty mustache.
Oh, that hurts. Why are you doing that to my face? I hate you.
That's BillyCBoxing.com. Consider this your warning.
As a young boy, all Billy C dreamed about was one day having his own catchphrase.
And we're back. And we're back.
One boy, one dream, one day, everyone will say.
And we're back. 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 And we're back.
Catchphrase coming soon to a theater near you.
And we're back. You're listening to the Talking Boxing with Billy C show. Glad you could join us, especially all the WMML listeners out there. For all you WMML listeners out there. You know, the new rankings, the Billy C Boxing rankings are up, so check it out, www.BillyCBoxing.com. You know, I was just thinking, during the break, we all love the famous divisions, the most popular divisions, heavyweight division, middleweight division, and of course, nowadays, and days have gone by, we also like the welterweight division, and the junior welterweight division has been pretty popular as well. But aside from those more notable divisions, what's the next one you like, man? What do you like? You like the cruiserweights? You like the super middles? You like the light heavies? You like the smaller guys? You like some of the featherweights we got? How about flyweights? Some great flyweights over the past bunch of years. Even bantamweights are good. What's your next favorite division after the top most popular divisions, which are the heavyweight, middleweight, welterweight, and junior welterweight divisions? What's your next favorite division, man? Let me know. Billy at TalkinBoxing, TalkinBoxing.com. Biggerback says, oh no, we know we're going to get some B-Hop news from Biggerback. Biggerback B-Hop is what we should call him. He says, but Biggerback, before you start typing, you just hang tight because you might become a Billy C fan after all. After today's show, that is. Biggerback says, one thing that can't be overlooked when determining an all-time list is the upsets, and B-Hop had many of those. The reason elites like Mike McCallum didn't make it is they didn't have as many upsets as he did, what he was supposed to do, and also we don't give Klitschko's much credit because they do what they're supposed to do. But when you have upsets like Ali did many times, nobody can say he did fight because he did the unexpected. That's why I place B-Hop that high. It's a good point. That's a very good point. I think the bottom line is what Biggerback is saying is, when a fighter wins a fight he's supposed to fight, how can you jump for joy? When a fighter wins a fight he's not supposed to win, that kind of goes a much longer way. And I agree with you, and a great example of that with B-Hop is the Pavlik fight. Not many people were given, Bernard Hopkins much of a chance against Kelly Pavlik at that time. Same thing happened when Brian Vera beat Andy Lee. Nobody was given Brian Vera a shot at that, anywhere. And I'll never forget the attitude ringside, what the thought process of everyone was that night. I was there, and it wasn't a question of who was going to win. It was when Andy Lee was going to knock out Brian Vera. I mean, it wasn't even close, But good, very good point by Biggerback. Here we go. The debate we've been waiting to see, all right? And it begins from Hawk. Hawk says, and I one thing I can't say about emails and message boards and stuff like that, things can definitely be taken the wrong way when you type it and stuff like that. But there are times when you can read an email and you can definitely tell that somebody's raising their voice or they're getting riled up about a topic, and I think it's pretty clear with this email from my man Hawk. He says, "How is Joe Calzaghe overrated? All I hear is people giving him little or no credit. If anything, B-Hop is overrated. Many people are saying B-Hop is an all-time great top 10, even though Joe Calzaghe beat him. It was an ugly close fight, but Calzaghe slapped the crap out of, he didn't use crap, slapped the crap out of B-Hop. B-Hop didn't do much to Joe. I wasn't much of a Joe Calzaghe fan until the end of his career when he beat Kessler, Lacey, Bernard Hopkins, and Roy Jones. And Joe Calzaghe never faked injuries or jumped in and out of the ring like Flopkins did. Joe had a 69% KO rate and 20 world title defenses. I figured Joe Calzaghe could beat at least half of the boxers you listed in your top 22, Billy C., half of which I've never heard of. Did you read about them in a book? Ha ha. He says, LOL, no offense. So I guess I put Joe Calzaghe at number 11. Joe also beat Bernard Hopkins and Roy Jones. Jr., I don't want to hear no excuses. And I remember Joe calling out Roy Jones in the 90s when Joe was undefeated. And, when Roy was undefeated. And so was Joe. He did right when Joe was undefeated. Joe finished his career undefeated. But he says Roy wouldn't take the fight, though. I think he meant when Roy was undefeated. All right, first and foremost, Hawk. Here's the thing. Joe Calzaghe, I said, is overrated. That's my opinion. I'm only speaking for myself. As far as Bernard Hopkins, I guess in theory, you're putting him at number 11 in our all-time great list, which you really can't do, because Joe Calzaghe never fought at middleweight. He always fought at super middleweight. Bernard Hopkins, on the other hand, has fought at middleweight, super middleweight. Actually, he never did fight technically at super middleweight. I guess he had a fight or two, but never won a title. He won a title at middleweight and light heavy, but so that's something there. Here's the thing. Let's take a look. And I think you mentioned, JC slapped the crap out of Bernard Hopkins. You see, that's my hang-up. That's my hang-up with Joe Calzaghe. He slaps. He slaps people. He just slaps them. He gives them a slap on the face. And to me, I don't care about your knockout ratio. Let's take a look at them, okay? Hawk, let's take a look. And by the way, my all-time great top, I ended up going 22 because I had to get to Bernard. But the truth of the matter is that, I've read a lot of books on boxing. I've watched a lot of film on boxing, and a combination of both is how I came up with my top 22. So, again, the age thing, and this is something that Tony Treeman and myself have talked about many, many times, and it scares us. It scares us. We're getting on in years, and someday when we're looking at the grass from the other side, you guys, you youngsters out there, you 20, 30, and 40-year-olds, you guys are going to be remembering great fights way back, like from the 1980s, which, I still got T-shirts and socks from the 80s that I wear. So to me, it's not that far away, but it's scary because I hope somebody along the way remembers some of these great fighters of yesteryear that were even 100 years ago today. Even fighters that we've forgotten about, that shouldn't be forgotten. It happens in all sports, but in boxing, it just seems worse. All right, let's take a look. Joe Calzaghe. Why do I think he's overrated? Well, I'll tell you right now, Hawk, why. Fast forward his career. He started his career in 1993, he won his first major fight was the British super middleweight title in 1995. So, pretty quick rise as far as regional titles go. He fought Chris Eubank in 1997 for a vacant world title. Now, I'm going to count Chris Eubank as a quality opponent that he fought. So there's one in 1997. All right. In 1999, making another defense, which was, he won the title. He made a couple of defenses. Then he fought Robin Reed and won a split decision. Close fight against Robin Reed, who's still fighting, by the way. I'm going to give him credit for that fight. Robin Reed was a quality opponent. He beat him. All right. Next one, you got to go to 2000 when he fought Omar Shika. Now, you may not look at Omar Shika as a quality opponent now, but then he was. And I give him credit for that. Not only does he fight him, he stops him in 5. He also fought Mario Vite, which he fought a couple of times, and I'm giving him credit for fighting him. All right, so what are we up to? We're up to 2, 3, 4 fighters. Charles Brewer at his peak, he fought him and beat him. There's 5 fighters, right? 2, 4, 5. 6 fighters, I'll give him credit. He fought Brian Mitchell when Brian Mitchell was at his peak. So there we go. We got 6. Number 7, you got to go all the way up to Jeff Lacey. At number 7, Jeff Lacey that had already been on his decline, but still, I'm going to give him credit there. There's 7, right? There's 7, right? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 fighters. Number 8 is Seiko Bika, even though he ran and just slapped and patted him from that point. So there you have 8 fights, all right? 8 fights that out of his 46, 8 fights when he fought quality opposition. Now, number 9 would be Seiko Bika. I got to give him credit for Seiko Bika, but again, slap, run. He fights Seiko Bika. That was the last fight I just gave him credit for. Peter Manfredo Jr. Man, if that fight in 2007 gets stopped in the 3rd round, come on, man. If you've ever seen Peter Manfredo, now I'm not saying that Calzaghe wouldn't have went on to win a slap little fly pitter patter fight against Peter Manfredo, because he probably would have. He was a handpicked opponent. As a matter of fact, Peter Manfredo moved up in weight for this fight. But that fight was stopped so friggin' fast, it's not funny. All right? I mean, Peter Manfredo is used to getting shots like that. He was getting slapped around on the ropes, and they wave it off. That was very, very quick stoppage, in my opinion. And he goes and he fights maybe one of his best victories of his career against Miguel Kessler. Some people have their opinions of that fight. As far as his last 2 fights of his career, the Bernard Hopkins fight, I got news for you. Many people think B-Hop won that fight, including me. All right, so Bernard Hopkins, lost a split decision, and then he fights Roy Jones Jr., a 40-plus Roy Jones Jr. In 2008. So I mean, when you count them all up, what do you got? 10, maybe 12 fights if you're going to add the old men that he fought out of 46 that he fought against quality opposition. And you ask, how can I say that he's overrated? Hold that thought, because there's more. No, wait, there's more. But there's more coming up in 2 minutes.
Are you ready, America? Then let's get it on with Fight Now TV. It's time, fight fans. Your channel has arrived. All the fights, all the names, all the action. From world-class boxing events to mixed martial arts showdowns and other combat sports matchups, Fight Now TV delivers the hits and more. Call your television provider and tell them you want to get it on with Fight Now TV. For more details, go to fightnow.com.
Broadcasting in all corners of the globe, on the web and radio.
He would scoff at a stretch of that man, I would think.
You're listening to Talkin' Boxing with Billy C. From upstate New York in the good old US of A.
Boxing is here to stay because we are here to stay.
The best 2 hours of boxing talk on the airwaves.
Hey, fight fans, check out KOFantasyBoxing.com. KO Fantasy Boxing is boxing's only trademarked fantasy game. Check it out, www.KOFantasyBoxing.com. Select your own gym, your own fighters, track them through a season that can last from 3 months to a year, depending upon which league you join. You got to check this out, man, www.KOFantasyBoxing.com. Join it today. Again, www.KOFantasyBoxing.com. And tell him Billy C sent ya.
Now back to Talkin' Boxing with Billy C., the only radio host man enough to take a punch from Mike Tyson.
Wait a minute, man. Hold on there. Jeremy, man, I need you to take this one, all right?
Wait, what? No way. I can't do this.
Need I remind you I'm Billy C, damn it? Now put on that mustache and get in there.
Hey, look at me. I'm Billy C. Crap.
The undisputed heavyweight champion of Boxing Talk Radio. It's Talkin' Boxing with Billy C.
Test 1 2. My fellow Americans, good evening. Welcome back to Talkin' Boxing with Billy C. It's great to be here discussing the sweet science with everybody. I love boxing. I love talking boxing. It's what I do.
Bill.
Wait, what?
Bill.
Why are you interrupting me? What?
Wrong.
What's the problem?
Billy,
what?
C.
I did not have...
We're gonna have to ask
wrong
you.
Speech. What do you
leave.
mean wrong, Billy C? What's going on here? Fine, I'll go. I just wanted to talk some boxing on TPSradio.net. That's all I wanted to do. I don't need your damn show. I'll get my own talking wrestling with the other Billy C. Yeah, that sounds good. I've always been a Hulkamaniac anyway.
Broadcasting live, brother. Welcome back to Talking Boxing with Billy C. on the mighty TPSradio.net, brother. What you gonna do, brother?
And we're back. You're listening to the Talking Boxing with Billy C show. I want to welcome the Fight Now television viewers that are just joining us like they do every day, Monday through Friday from 6 to 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And if you don't have Fight Now on your sports channel lineup, and you need to call your local television provider, no matter what they are, satellite or cable, tell them that you want Fight Now right now. That's right. That's what you got to do. Pick up the phone and call them. For all the information about the channel, you can find it on their website, www.fightnow.com. And coming up in a little bit, we got my man Alex Papali joining us. We're going to be doing the Blast from the Past, which is Jack Johnson. Can't wait to talk about Jack Johnson. So Alex is going to be coming up in about 15 minutes, and we'll talk about some other stuff that will lead. Hey, you know what? We may not. We may just get right into. To Jack Johnson, because there's a lot to talk about with Jack Johnson. So we might have an extended blast from the past today, starting about 15 minutes. So anyway, right now we're in the middle of a debate, so to speak. My man Hawk got pretty riled up yesterday when I mentioned, like I often do, that Joe Calzaghe was it was overrated, and I just went through his record. I'm giving him 10 or 12. Counting the old men, maybe 12. What do we got? We got let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8, 9, 10. We'll say 11. We'll say 12 out of his whole 46 wins. 12 were against quality opposition. 12. And here's another thing. The guy's entire career was at super middleweight, which I respect. But his entire career, out of 46 fights, 1 was in Germany, 2 were in the States. Those were his last 2, and 43 were in the UK. If you want to know why the fights with Joe Calzaghe and Roy Jones and some of the other fighters didn't materialize in the 90s, is because he refused to leave his comfort of his hometowns and his home country. That's why. There was no money to be made. Roy Jones Jr. going to Wales. So Joe Calzaghe, overrated. Now, in my opinion, overrated. 46 wins. Of the 46, I'm giving him 12 against quality opposition. 262 rounds as a pro with a 70% knockout ratio, 5'11", 73-inch reach. He's 40 years old today. All right, 43 years old today. He had a stellar career, really. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. 46 wins, no losses, 32 coming by knockout. Little slapsy-maxy puncher. I mean, come on. Now we're talking about Bernard Hopkins, all right? Now, I've been critical of Bernard and everything else, but let's take a look. Let's take a serious look at Bernard Hopkins' record, all right? First and foremost, the man has fought 458 rounds as a pro, all right? Almost twice as many as Joe Calzaghe, with a 52% knockout ratio. Slightly taller at 6'1", 75-inch reach. He's 47 now and still fighting. Former world middleweight champion and light heavyweight champion. Of his wins, he's got 52 wins. He's got 6 losses. Never been stopped, even at 47. A couple of draws. Of his wins, let's take a look at his wins, all right? When you look back at him, and here's a guy who I said is overrated. Now I'm starting to really, to be honest with you, when I started this debate before I came on the air, I'm saying to myself, oh, man, could it be I was was I it's hard to get that word out. Was I wrong about Bernard Hopkins, and I look at it, his first world title shot came against, by far, one of the pound-for-pound top fighters of all time, really, especially during that era, and that's Roy Jones Jr. in 1993. Went the distance with him. Now, you could go ahead and argue with some of his early fights. Some of them were against rough and tough and tumble type fighters. I'm not even going to count them. I'm just going to count the guys after he won his world title against Lupe Aquino, who was a quality fighter. But let's not even count him as a quality opponent. Yes, he was, but let's not even count him. We don't have to. And he still surpasses Joe Calzaghe easily. Joe Lipsy was a very good fighter. Fought and beat him. John David Jackson, you guys heard of him now. He's in a lot of winning teams' corners. This guy's a fantastic trainer. Beat him. Glenn Johnson back in 97 beat him. Simon Brown beat him. Robert Allen beat him. Antoine Eccles when he was a quality fighter, not today's Antoine Eccles. We're talking about back in 1999, 13 years ago, when he was good. Sid Vanderpool, another quality fighter. Keith Holmes was a fantastic fighter. Beat him in 12. Felix Trinidad. Carl Daniels. You know, I mean, the list goes on and on. William Choppy. Robert Allen. Oscar De La Hoya. Howard Eastman. Nobody gave Bernard Hopkins a shot against Eastman when he fought him in 2005. Bernard Hopkins was already an old man. You know, he beat Jermaine Taylor, in my opinion. He beat him twice, even though on the record books it shows 2 losses. You know, he should have hung him up then, but no, he kept going. Antonio Tarver, a former world champion, that was for the IBO's light heavyweight title, and he won it, and he beat him. Winky Wright in a boring fight, but he beat him. Winky Wright was a top fighter. You know, the Joe Calzaghe fight, hey, it's questionable. I thought B-Hop won that fight. I'm telling you, I thought he won that fight. I thought he came from behind and won that fight. You know, he had a couple of layups in between. How about Kelly Pavlik? That was a signature fight for him. He should have went. I thought he should have rode off into the sunset. He had a win over Enrique Olanaros, big deal. He did finally get his rematch with Roy Jones, beat him, and then his last 4 fights were 2 against Jean Pascal, 2 against Chad Dawson. You can't even come close to comparing the level of opposition that Bernard Hopkins faced compared to Joe Calzaghe. So I'm sorry, Hawk. I'm not a big fan of either one of them, but the more I look into Bernard Hopkins, you can't even for a half a second convince me, and I'm not even a Bernard Hopkins fan, but for a half a second, you can't convince me that Bernard Hopkins is not higher than Joe Calzaghe in an all-time great list. Forget weights. There's no way. Joe Calzaghe, in my opinion, was one of the most overrated fighters ever. You can't fight 46 fights and have less than 12 against quality opposition, in my book, and be considered an all-time great. I'm sorry, you can't. He will get in there because, like Greg Haugen said, if you fight your sister 50 times, you're going to lose 1 or 2. So you got to get credit for being undefeated, and that's what I think Joe Calzaghe will get credit for. So, sorry, man. But Hawk also sends me an email and says, my sister used to date a local cop. Oh, God. If my sister ever brought home a cop, I think, we would have all been a little on edge. But, if one of my daughters ever brought home a cop, I would have been like, what are you kidding me? Get that stench out of here. But listen to this. And you wonder why I don't like cops, but listen to this. My sister, this is from Hawk. He says, my sister used to date a local cop, and she got to know several of the young coppers. Their hobby was weightlifting, taking performance-enhancing drugs, and they enjoyed roughing people up. It was fun for them. She said they liked to tase people, but they would often ask drunk guys if they had been drinking tequila. They would tase those guys because tequila drinkers would always crap in their pants and stink up the cop car. And he does a LOL. See, now, I find no humor in that, although it is kind of funny. I find no humor to know that, cops are like that. And that's my hang-up. What Hawk is saying right here is what I can't stand about cops. Now they're not all like that. But they all have that persona. I knew a kid in school when I was growing up, great kid. He was a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine. He became a cop. And the minute he put that uniform on, he became an idiot. You take the uniform off and they're normal. As soon as they put that uniform on, they're idiots. Cops have this tendency to think they're better than you and me. The authority. Do you ever go to court and see the way the cop, the lame-o cop that's got to be the court judge, the court guy, whatever they call him, the bailiff. The guy that's, been demoted somehow, can't even walk the street. Now he's stuck in a courtroom. Do you ever see his demeanor? You know, he's probably so pissed off that he gets the crappy coffee and no donuts and all that stuff. And, he's always acting like a tough guy. You know, always treating people that are going into court for a stupid traffic ticket like they just murdered somebody. I can't stand them. Thanks for that email, because you know what, Hawk? You put it in perspective about cops. James Keister says, one other thing I forgot to say about Hawk. He says, Don King, the greatest promoter ever. Maybe you mean the biggest crook. King was a crook. You know, that bothers me, man, because King, he gets a bad rap. Did King rip off fighters? I'm sure he has. Every promoter has. Everybody's ripped off somebody once in their career in boxing. I mean, it's sad to say, but it's true. But you know what? King gets a bad rap, and the reason why is because, a fighter signs a contract with Don King for $1 million. He's happier than a pig, and you know what? Then all of a sudden, he finds out Don King made $3 million, and now King ripped him off. That's the perception that you guys, the fans and the media, get. They hear the crying from the other side. They don't look at it from a business perspective. Did Don King make some crazy rip-off moves? Yeah. To give you an example, Alex Papali, who's going to be calling in about 3 minutes, is made a point about Mike Tyson and how Don King charged him thousands of dollars a week for towels and everything else. That could be considered a ripoff, no doubt. But yeah, I do believe Don King will go down in history as being the greatest boxing promoter ever. I mean, he changed the face of how business is done in the sport of boxing. So, anyway, James Keister says, okay, I get what you're asking about the Klitschko's. Nobody is going to beat them with only 2 years until retirement. First, the Klitschko's are uncanny knack. They have an uncanny knack for making their opponents shut down and fight at a snail's pace. I could agree with that because they're sick of getting that jab in their face. He says, look at their last several fights. Vladimir versus Peter, Vladimir versus Hay, Vladimir versus Vitaly against Adamek, etc. It looked like the other guy was asleep. Secondly, I doubt they'll take very many, if any, fights against competitors who could possibly beat them this close to their retirement. The problem is there is nobody close that's going to give them a tough fight. So I don't know. I guess what you're saying is that they retire on their own terms. So go cast your vote, James. Come on, James Keister. Get up there and cast your damn vote. BillyCBoxing.com. That's what we're looking for, your votes. We don't need the damn email. We want the vote cast. No, I appreciate the email. He goes on to say, on another note, on Tuesday's Thumbs Up, Thumbs Down, you were trying to refer to the 1935 kidnapping of Charles Lindbergh's baby. Right. I wanted to make sure that I reference it right. It just came out of my head when we were talking about Don King. Ironically, we were talking about Don King, and during our interview with Don King, he said, I've been blamed for everything. The kidnapping, Lindbergh kidnapping, but he wanted to elaborate. He says, the kidnapping of Charles Lindbergh's baby, which expanded the powers of the FBI, expanded. He says, I put kidnapping in quotes because even though Bruno Halpin was convicted of the crime, most crime and history buffs now believe that Charles Lindbergh, having been a genetic purist and a Nazi sympathizer, killed his own baby for being born handicapped. I did see a show about that. As soon as I read this email this morning, I said, oh, you know what? I did see one of those. It's on I don't know if it's on the History Channel or whatever, but they were evaluating those. They had that. They had the what's his name? President. The president got shot. I can't believe I can't think. What's his name? Kennedy. Yeah. Kennedy, when he was shot. The big conspiracy theories of some of these famous crimes and who done it. But anyway. Thanks for the email, James. Go cast your vote. We're looking forward to that stuff as well. And finally, we got one more email here. It's from Erling Tenvik. And Erling says, I wonder if you've talked about boxing at colleges on your show. I'm a big fan of boxing and of this show. My brother's 17, and he's very physically gifted. Is there any opportunities for boxing scholarships or college boxing at a high level in an English-speaking country? It could be an interesting topic in our family, and many others. College is a must. So to combine that would be preferable. And this is a heavyweight, so maybe that makes a difference. Now, Erling is from Norway, so I appreciate the email. College boxing used to be a huge thing here in the States, and it kind of fizzled out. But, it's making a comeback from what I understand. And a great example of that is Mike Lee, who went to Notre Dame and won all kinds of college championships there. And he's doing pretty well so far as a pro. He's undefeated. I believe he's about 10-0 right now. But he's made a lot more money selling Subway sandwiches. So, yes, if I were you, Erling, I would definitely look into the colleges here in the States. Now, one thing I'm going to tell everybody about Erling, he's from Norway, and from what I understand, boxing is banned in the country in Norway. Cecilia Brækhus, who's, everybody thinks she's from Denmark. She actually is from Norway, and I met a group of journalists when I was in Denmark watching. I was at one of her fights, and they were telling me, how much there's so many fans of boxing in the country of Norway, and it's illegal, and that's why these people have to go to other places. So, hey, when you're complaining about boxing, make sure you consider yourself lucky that you can even watch it. And considering myself lucky right now, joining me, the brother I always wanted, Alex Papali. What's up, my man?
Good morning, Billy C. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. How you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, Stefan Tankstead, who was Michael Spinks's one and only heavyweight title defense, was from Norway, and I remember him having a very difficult time, even being allowed to train in certain places.
Yeah, no, it's I didn't even realize that it was illegal and banned, in Norway until I was at the Cecilia Brækhus fight in Denmark, and I had a chance to talk to these guys, and they're like, oh yeah, that's why she doesn't, fight in Norway. And I was like, oh man, but anyway. I got some news that we're going to be talking about a little later, but you know what, Alex? I think we need to get right into the
blast from the past. We shine the spotlight again on fighters from years past.
Top ranking. Joe Louis is the leading contender.
Joe Frazier with a left hook. Good right hand thrown by Foreman that time. Look at that left hook.
That goes to Ray Mancini.
It's Blast from the Past on Talkin' Boxing.
And this week's Blast from the Past is being sponsored by the International Boxing Organization, where their computerized system is second to none. Check them out, www.iboboxing.com. It features one of my favorite fighters, and his name is Jack Johnson. And joining me to do it is my man, Alex Papali. What's up, brother? This is one of our favorite fighters. I know we talked about him before, but I have him in my all-time great list. I mean, he's in my top 10 for sure. Bert Sugar had him at his top 10, number 10, as a matter of fact, all-time great. Jack Johnson, I see a lot of comments and opinions of him, from some of the younger listeners, and some of their descriptions of him is boring, and that he wouldn't have survived in today's boxing arena, so to speak, and because of his style and everything else. And I'm not so sure. I don't think we ever really got to see the best Jack Johnson. I really don't. I think, most reads that I've had on him, he toyed with his opponents. He was obviously criticized for not fighting some of the other top black fighters, but just like we accept today, it was about the money, and this was a guy ahead of his time, the way his thought processes were, and also his boxing style.
Yeah, it sure was. I mean, his style was, I think that's, sometimes you hear the word pioneer or revolutionary. I think both of those are apropos for him. He definitely, I mean, part was that he was the heavyweight champion, because there had been he certainly emulated Joe Ganz's style. He was a fan of Barbados Joe Walcott, but he was uniquely his own person, and I think that's definitely what both inside and outside of the ring, and that's why I think even today, a lot of people who first get into boxing and then they hear about Jack Johnson. I mean, I remember when I first heard about it, I couldn't believe it. I mean, it sounds almost like a folk hero, like a Paul Bunyan type character. He's incredible. It's he does what heavyweight champions should do, and that is straddle the line between myth and legend.
Well, the funny thing about Jack Johnson is that, I've read a lot of Jack Johnson's books. I've suffered through the footage of Jack Johnson, and that's a lot of the problem that I think that the younger people have, is that they can't. We live in such an age where technology advances so quickly that today's youths want to touch and feel things, before they make a decision. And I know that works for me with women, but I don't know if you could do that with boxing sometimes. And if you just look at the rare footage of Jack Johnson, I don't think you can appreciate it, and you're forced to go back to some of the write-ups and like I said one time, you got to read a lot of stuff to come up with your own opinion of Jack Johnson. And one example, like you just mentioned, folk hero. If you read Jack Johnson's autobiography, he's like this hero, man. He's like this, the way he perceived himself was exactly that, a folk hero. His version of him being in exile was more like he was a secret spy for the United States. And I mean, it was just kind of crazy stuff, and I mean, you don't know if there was any truth to it or not, but I think I lost track of how many different accounts of Jack Johnson's life I've read, and I come to the conclusion that this was a man that was very gifted, had a lot of talent, at times would like I mentioned earlier, toy with his opponents. He was very defensive-minded. He could throw a jab. He had power whenever he wanted it. It was just like it was his baseball. He got to pitch in all his fights, and he would determine, when he would win or if he would lose.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing about it, that why people might think of him as boring, is that it definitely, the style clash from the other fighters of the time, they were largely bruisers and brawlers, and he used science, he used strategy, he could take the fight into the later rounds, he could tie them up, his strength and his size, mixed with his defensive skills, made him so difficult, an opponent that, and then add to that the character that he had, of like you alluded to. There were 4 great black heavyweights of this era, but of them, by far, the one who was the character who simply would not take no for an answer, no from the white establishment, was James Arthur Johnson, known as Little Arthur or Jack Johnson, and Papa Jack was another one of his nicknames, and he was the one who eventually Hugh McIntosh, the promoter, put the fight together and got him a shot at the title. He was great at infighting. That was another thing that people don't maybe realize how important that is. Or at least was in those days, and you're right, you get it more from reading the accounts, because when you watch it in that herky-jerky film footage, you don't quite appreciate, the nuances of it. I think you'd need to see it in HD to see what's really happening, because when you watch the bits of the Jeffries fight or the Stanley Ketchel fight or the Tommy Burns fight, I mean, that's another thing that made Johnson so popular was that he was coming. He came around at a time when film was just starting to get out there and spread around the world, and so of course boxing, and especially him, at one point he was one of the most photographed people on the planet, and by far the most photographed black person on the planet.
Yeah, well, he came. That's true, and he was a smart businessman because he utilized some of the revenues that he saw from film, and a lot of his deals included that. What they would do, just so the listeners know, and I know you know, Alex, is that they would film these early fights during this era. And then after the fight, it wasn't instant like it is now. You know what just happened after round 3. Somebody's tweeting, and before round 4 starts, it's that instant here in today's world. But then, they would be. You wouldn't hear the account of that fight for possibly a couple of days later when it finally made to your local newspaper, and then a month later, 2 months later, they would go on a circuit with the film of that and show it in movie theaters. That was the beginning of that era, and Jack Johnson was able to get some revenues from that. He was also a guy that was criticized both from the white society and black society because of the turmoil his attitude basically created, and I value that, and I think that's one of my favorite things about Jack Johnson was that he wanted to make his own decisions, and he came around in a time when this world was very prejudiced. As a matter of fact, most people look at just the United States, but a common friend that we both have just put a book out that shows how prejudiced he was being treated in other countries as well, not just the United States. So that whole issue had to be a weight on his shoulders that must have just been extraordinary.
Yeah, because not only was he dealing with fending off opponents, but you're right, just getting fights was difficult. Going up against in this country, it was the government flat out that went after him, and eventually that's why he had to. It was, in a sense, he was a modern-day banishment, where he lived in exile. He went overseas to avoid being arrested, on a trumped-up charges on the Mann Act, where women that it's sort of interesting because the Mann Act actually was just used recently to bring down Elliot Spitzer. The definition of it is White Slavery Act is one of the common names they use for it, and it's illegal to transport a woman across state lines for immoral purposes. And now, of course, whether or not they're willing or not, I think that's the major thing there. It's not like it's kidnapping. These people, at the time, this was Johnson's wife.
Right. That was the whole thing that killed me. And I was just gonna say it was his wife. The issue here, just so the listeners know, it was a racial issue. It was the fact that Jack Johnson liked white women, and they
wanted to find a way to get him, and that's what they chose.
Yeah, and that was just terrible. How he was chastised for that, and it didn't help matters that he flaunted it and did not care what society felt about him, and what made it even worse was that fantastic, great writers like one of my favorite guys in Jack London used to publicly state in the newspapers, racial comments and slurs about Jack Johnson and everything else. And this was a guy that flaunted it. He loved it. He wore the big fur coats and threw money around like it was, not money. You could see why people got upset with him in that era. But what made it worse was that fellow black Americans couldn't even cheer for their hero because they were, basically, I mean, let's face it, we both know that, black Americans were literally murdered over supporting Jack Johnson during his time.
Yes, there was some race riots that would, result after some of his fights, and but at the same time, he certainly was an inspiration to a lot of African Americans at the time. And as you mentioned, you alluded to Teresa Runstetler's book. I did read a little bit of that yesterday in preparing for this, and it really it's a fascinating perspective on Jack Johnson, especially as Americans. I think let's face it. America's racist history is pretty well known, and I think in a lot of ways it certainly was lived out in the life of Jack Johnson and his persecution. And I shouldn't just say that they chose to go after him with the Mann Act. I mean, that was also that's what probably infuriated the white establishment the most. I mean, in some states there were laws against interracial marriage. The fact that Jack Johnson had this was a black man with white women, that he seemed to have an affinity for white women that infuriated the establishment, and they had to go after him. But in Teresa Runstetler's book, Jack Johnson, Rebel Sojourner, it's fascinating just some of the things she talks about. There's a chapter on how the film of the James Jeffries fight, how people tried to ban it. There was a campaign to ban it from going around the world. And in townships in South Africa, Jack Johnson, they would try to ban some of the fight posters before his fights because they became such an inspiration to some of the local people there when they saw this image of this powerful black figure. So he really was a figure that around the world, non-whites were seeing, because this was also a time of empire. And I think that's one of the things that was fascinating. Remember at the BillyCBoxing Hall of Fame last year was when Runcie gave his lecture. I found it fascinating that boxing seemed to begin at times of empire with the Roman Empire, the Egyptian Empire, the Greek empires. Then it disappeared, and it came back during the British Empire and the beginnings of the American Empire. And that's right where we're talking about, where Jack Johnson emerges. And so I think around the world, he was this figure that was of inspiration, and the brown native, the brown-skinned native, striking back against the white power culture. And I think that's you get a lot of that in Teresa's book, and or at least from what I've read so far, and it's beautifully written. It's definitely something people should check out.
The thing with Jack Johnson is, his parents were slaves. They were born into slavery, and after the Civil War, I mean, just to give the viewers and listeners a perspective of Jack Johnson, his parents were born slaves. They were freed during the Civil War. Jack Johnson gets born. Didn't have an easy childhood. That first generation that was born into slavery and then freed wasn't exactly a party after the Civil War. So very still close to slavery conditions, and that's what Jack Johnson was born into. He started boxing, and quite honestly, it wasn't until he fought Joe Chowinski that they both landed in jail for fighting because it was illegal. And Joe Chowinski, who had been around, and we've talked about this guy a lot in the past as an opponent, so to speak, kind of liked Jack Johnson and taught him a lot in jail. And Jack Johnson has given Joe Chowinski a lot of credit for basically settling him down and showing him the finer arts of the sweet science. And when he emerged from that time, he was a different fighter and just got better and better from that point on.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those things that I think people kind of forget as well, is that, as racist a period as this was, the boxers themselves, yes, there were certain personalities that did have, their bigotry between them and stuff, but some of the fighters had nothing but mutual respect, just like you see today, where guys might, be blood and guts for 12 rounds and embrace at the end. That same sort of camaraderie was there, and it went across race. And in the case of Joe Chewinski, that's just a perfect example. And I think that's one of the things that I love about boxing is, as much as it seems like such a basic sport, there's always a lot of complexity and nuance if you're willing to look and to dig a little, and that's one of the things that's fascinating about Jack Johnson is, as much he is a symbol of black pride and black power. There is there were white people along the way that he did get along with, and that he did befriend, trusted him, and Hugh McIntosh was a perfect example. I think in some ways Hugh McIntosh is kind of forgotten about the fact that he put that fight together. A lot of promoters were afraid to put a guy like Jack Johnson in against a heavyweight champion.
Yeah, well, they picked the wrong guy, because once he won that fight against Burns, that was the end of that, and he became the champion. And a lot of things, now before we get into that, he fought a lot of fighters. All the best fighters of the era. And we look at possibly the greatest heavyweight era as being the late 60s and 70s. But realistically, this era was also has to be mentioned in those discussions with great fighters like Bob Fitzsimmons and James Jeffries and so on and so forth. There's a lot of other fighters, and a couple of his fights along the way, the fights against Sam McVeigh and Sam Langford that he had, and Joe Jeanette. Great fighters. He did lose to Joe Chewinski, and he did lose to another future heavyweight champion, and that happens to have made my all-time great middleweight list, and that's Marvin Hart. And it wasn't a big thing. That's the thing I like about yesteryear so much better than today. These fighters became craftsmen of the sport of boxing. They learned their craft. They honed their skills, and they got better. They learned something from the losses. Today, a loss puts a nail in the coffin of your career, and I think it's so wrong, because I think fighters don't get a chance to develop into what they really can be unless they fail along the way a little bit. And I think Jack Johnson was a great example of that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, those days, they weren't afraid to, fight somebody difficult, and maybe you pick up a loss, but then that's what rematches were for, as far as the other greats of the time, I think the one that I think the biggest, because the other great four black heavyweights of the age, Jeanette, Langford, McVeigh, and Johnson, of course, they all fought each other. But I think the one that I really think the biggest question mark is there is Sam Langford, because when Jack Johnson fought him, he outweighed him by almost 30 pounds, and that's the fight that I think, boy, I wish they fought again later, because he had fought Jeanette something like 12 times. So, I know there's at least one person out there that thinks that that thinks that they should have gone more Jeanette's way, and if they ever fought, when he was a champion, Jeanette would have taken it. But in a lot of what you read, it seems that Johnson got the better of him most of those occasions, and the same was true with McVeigh. But the thing that's, the little asterisk about the fight with Sam Langford is Langford was only 156, and Johnson was 185. It was a cruiserweight versus, almost a junior middle. So, there are some reports that Langford dropped Johnson. If you read Clay Moyle's book, he did maybe have a round where he had him in some trouble, but for the most part, Johnson beat him pretty soundly. But would that have happened again 4 years later? I don't know.
Listen, before we get into the weight issue, you have to remember one thing. That was the way it was done. You were ahead. There were only the 8 weight classes. I don't even know if there was full 8 at that time, but let's assume there were. And anybody could fight anybody. They didn't care as long as you didn't pass the weight limit. In other words, if the weight limit was let's say welterweight, 147 pounds, as long as you got in that ring and did not weigh 147 pounds or 147.1. It was okay. So that means if you weighed 147 and I stepped in and I weighed 120, so what? And that's what happened with the heavyweight division. Everybody wanted to challenge the heavyweight champion. Why? Because that title, that guy who was the heavyweight champion was the baddest man on the planet, and people wanted an opportunity against that. That didn't change for years. Rocky Marciano's era was still like that. All of those great fighters, as we were talking about it yesterday, Ezra Charles and Jersey Joe and all these other fighters, Billy Conn. I mean, they were smaller guys that stepped up and tried to get a shot at the heavyweight title. So, the size disparity isn't something that we can really complain about today, only because it was the way it was. And speaking of that, Jack Johnson, and when you go to those dream matchups where you put a guy like Jack Johnson against a fighter of more modern times, consider this. He was a monster. He was looked upon as a monster of the ring. I mean, look at his nickname, the Galveston Giant, right? This was a man that was 6'1.5". All right, he weighed, I think the most he ever weighed was maybe 215, maybe, and this is a guy that was considered a giant. I mean, he's a cruiserweight today, Alex.
Right. Yeah. I mean, back then he was gigantic. It does show you how much people have changed in size, and that's one of the things about pound for pound lists that as fun as they are to do, you could certainly make the argument that these guys would get clobbered by the fighters of today. If you look at things like Olympic records and stuff, the modern athletes trash mop the floor with the older athletes. Now, the question is, would that happen in boxing? I don't know, and because there's so much more there's more to it than just throwing a punch and maybe having more force behind the punch. It's also taking the punch, the character of fighting a long time, the craft of and defense. How would that play out? But in terms of the physicality and just the diet, the nutrition, the training, all those things, the modern athlete, you would think, is so much better. So, yeah, that's why pound-for-pound lists are, they're not worth killing each other over. But it is one of the things why you do have to kind of go to the record books and the old newspaper reports, because when you read people's perception at the time, the impact is much more significant than when you watch the video today with 21st century eyes, because part of that is, especially when you're watching from this era, part of that is the film itself is not at the exact pace that it would have been if you were to, try to play it back, when you watch a video played back today. Today, our video can capture that, but back then it was film, and they were film strips and stuff. I mean, this is the first days of video. So when people watch the old footage, they're really not seeing, the exact reflexes of these guys. And I think in terms of reflexes, these guys have got to stand up to the guys of today, because that's what boxing is all about.
Yeah, I agree, and you make a great point. Other sports, we know that the athleticism is much better today, and I do think, and I've started to, since I've been doing this show and since I've debated it so much, I honestly believe, as much as it pains me to say, I honestly believe that today's athlete in every sport, including boxing, is better than yesteryear. The problem is that in boxing, the sport isn't better. Yes, the athletes may be better, but the sport itself isn't better because of the outlook that we talk about. The fighters that don't want to have the L, or the fights that never happen because the risk versus the reward factor, and all those other things that mold the sport into what we have today versus yesteryear. But Jack Johnson, in my opinion, is one of the best fighters of all time, regardless of the era. Like I said, when we opened, he had a tendency to toy with his opposition. That's how much better he was. He demolished a guy that many people thought he would not beat to win the world title. Yes, he did not give Sam Langford and McVeigh and Joe Jeanette those chances at the world title, but that was simply because of money, not that he was afraid of them. It was about the money, and he knew that he could make way more money fighting white fighters than he could fighting a fellow black man, and he was chastised for that on both sides, actually. But let's fast forward to his title fight that he lost in Havana. There's been a lot of controversy around that fight. It came at a time when Jack Johnson was getting tired of running. He hadn't been in the States, I believe, for several years, probably more than several. It might have been 4 or 6 years. And he was missing the United States. His mom was ill. He wanted to get back. And he knew that he was going to have to do some time. And he was trying to cut a deal. And, well, there's a lot of stories behind that fight. Tell us your thoughts on the fight in Cuba.
Yeah, he had left the country in 1913, so he had been pretty much on the run. He had fought in Paris and Argentina, and there were rumors that he had made arrangements that if he was not the champion, he would be able to return to the States and get a much lessened sentence. However, when you look at his record, he didn't return to the States for quite a few more years, but for 5 more years, actually. But that was really the state. One of my favorite fighters is Sam McVeigh, and Sam McVeigh was there in Havana. He was good friends with Jack Johnson, and he was helping him train. And a few days before, talk about potential injury. We got, what's his name there, Adonis Stevenson, hurting his hand, 5 days out from a fight? Jack Johnson sparred with Sam McVeigh, I think it was the day before, 2 days before. I think it was the day before the weigh-in. And McVeigh later, on his way back to the States, once he got into, they went from Cuba to Florida and then was taking the train, he talked to the reporter Damon Runyon. He swore that Johnson threw that fight because Johnson was out of shape. And McVeigh had very little respect for Jess Willard. He did not think he was a very good fighter at all. Jess Willard would not fight him. And he thought that on most days, Jack Johnson could have easily beaten him. However, McVeigh sparred with Johnson that week, and he said he had nothing. So the Jack Johnson with nothing went 26 rounds with Jess Willard in the Havana heat. And, when you watch the video, you can make up your own mind. Some people say he's shielding his eyes from the hot sun, because he's perfectly conscious when he gets dropped. and that he was actually waiting. Why he waited so long? I mean, if you're going to throw a fight, why not go down in round 3 instead of round 26?
Well,
you know,
did you hear?
110 degrees.
Do you remember some of the other things? They said that there was money involved,
Right, and he was waiting for a signal
from his wife.
Right?
Right, and Sam McVay backed up that story.
Exactly. So you know, I mean, it's one of those, you know, like so much about him. There are, you know, there's stories and there's things that you can, you know, argue about forever. When you watch the video, I tell you, it looks like he's shielding his eyes. Now, some people, I've even heard some people say that there's some sort of autonomic response when you're dropped and when you're hit a certain way that your arms will go up like that. I don't know. You know, you're going to have to, it's on YouTube, and of this era, you know, he definitely, and I think, again, it's because he's a heavyweight, there's a lot more footage of him than there are of some of the other fighters of this era.
You know, it's funny to say, and they're saying it here in the chat room, Coach is saying, yeah, he was out of shape. He didn't throw the fight. He lost it. You know, out of shape. Out of shape means you go 3 rounds. 26?
26,
I know. You know, and 100 and something. And the other thing is, remember something. You know, and this is one of the most amazing things. And I thought about it with the Joe Gans fight out in Las Vegas in Goldfield. And you know, we're talking about Havana, Georgia, at 100 degrees. We're talking about him fighting with a guy leaning on him like Jess Willard, who was a monster. You know, 100 degrees after 26 rounds, 3 minutes. How refreshed can you get when you go to your corner, even if they're dumping that warm water? Because there's no ice. Nobody's bringing you fresh ice, especially not doing it for Jack Johnson. They had those towels. Remember, they used to just you could see the footage of them taking like the towels and like making a fanning you with the towel. That's your big refreshment in between rounds, you know. And you know, to be out of shape, yeah, he probably was a little out of shape. He was tired. He was like you mentioned, 6 years. He was in exile. You know, he wanted to see his ailing mother. Enough was enough. He thought he was going to get better treatment when he got back to the States. Ultimately, he lost his fight. Did go back to the States. They put him in jail, which was pretty much, in my opinion, ludicrous. You know, but still, he served the time. He did the time. Went back and tried to resurrect his career. Continued on with his career, fighting never to get another chance at a title again. In his post-fight years, he actually got pissed off at Joe Louis for not working with him at times. He wanted to work with Joe Louis, and Joe Louis didn't want to. A lot of people around Joe Louis actually used Jack Johnson as an example. You know, because let's face it, Joe Louis was the first black champion since Jack Johnson, and they were like, listen, this is how you need to act, and we saw the finished product of Joe Louis. You do not want to act like this guy did, Jack Johnson, and you know, deal with all of the BS that he dealt with.
Absolutely, yeah. That he became a warning to, you know, black fighters that came after him. Tragically, I mean, it's only today, and well, also I think Ali changed this as well, and that's one of the things that Teresa gets into in her book is that, and I mean, when you look at, and most people would agree that the best heavyweights ever, most people are going to throw Joe Louis, Muhammad Ali, and Jack Johnson in there. You know, some people put Jack Dempsey in there too, or Marciano, but usually Dempsey and Marciano, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's me, but most people put those 3 guys up there. And when you think about them, what they represent in terms of the kind of person each one was like, Jack Johnson and Ali are far more similar than either of them are to Joe Louis. And yeah, Joe Louis was definitely, you know, it was a different kind of America. America has always had a hard time with race, and in a way, you know, Jack Johnson, the way the white establishment reacted to him, it didn't help things. But I do think that, you know, Jack Blackburn was of the era, of Jack Johnson era. So when he was training Joe Louis, he was very aware of, that I can remember from Joe Louis's autobiography. Jack Blackburn taught him, it's going to be hard for you to get decisions because there's still a lot of racism out there. So let your right fist be the referee. He told him never be photographed with a white woman. That was directly because of Jack Johnson. And it really wasn't, and this is something Teresa talks about, it wasn't until 1969 when Ali was in exile and people started talking about Jack Johnson at the same time, and Miles Davis put out his album that was a tribute to Jack Johnson. So there definitely was this uniquely individualistic and unapologetic powerful figure that Jack Johnson was, and I think that people need to remember that, and that's one of the reasons why I think it would be great if he's pardoned, by the president. But at the same time, if we pardon him and sort of gloss over the racism of his era, I think that would be a shame, because that's part of what made him so great was he persevered despite that.
Yeah, and that was a huge obstacle. And quite honestly, I don't know if I could have ever done that. But Jack Johnson, in my opinion, was one of the greatest fighters of all time in any weight class. He finished his career fighting exhibitions into his 60s, 123 total fights of his career on record, 77 wins, 48 coming by knockout. He lost 13, had 14 draws, had 19 no decisions. He was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1990. And unfortunately, he died in a car crash. And, it was one of these, an interesting story. I believe he was in North Carolina or something like that, one of the Carolinas. And he was racing to get to a fight or coming back from a fight or something.
I think he was racing to get to, wasn't it the Billy Conn Lewis rematch?
Yes, I think it was. And he got into a now this guy loved fast cars. One of my favorite, we're out of time, but one of my favorite stories is when he got pulled over in his heyday going across some southern state, and he used to drive the fastest cars you could at the time, and gets pulled over for doing like 60 miles an hour, which was unheard of back then. And the cop finds him on the side of the road or whatever, and he I forget what the amount was, but let's say it's $100. Was it $50? He hands him $100, and the cop says, "I said it was $50." He says, "Yeah, but I'm going to be going just as fast on the way back." So I mean, that's the kind of guy he was. And when he died in a car accident, and it was kind of touching, and it was showing you the changing of the guard, so to speak, because when he was brought in, nobody knew who he was, and when he was on the table. The doctor, an older doctor in his presence there said, "You're looking at a former world champion, former world heavyweight champion, one of the greatest ever. That's Jack Johnson on that table, And even Jack Johnson was becoming unknown in his era. And I just think that as famous as he was, it happens to all of us. I mean,
yeah, and it's true. I mean, even when you type him into YouTube, you got to make sure to put Jack Johnson boxer, because otherwise some recording artist comes up.
That's a shame. 68 years old.
Got the same name, I guess.
68 years old. He left us, and that was in 1946. I would have loved to have had more footage on him, because if he would have lived for another 10 years, we could have gotten a lot more stuff on him, and maybe some tall tales, which would have been fun to go back and watch now. But great job with the blast, Alex. I appreciate you coming on and doing this a little longer. To be honest with you, I could be talking about Jack Johnson for the next 2 hours straight. I love the guy, and there's a lot to talk about with him that we didn't even touch on.
Absolutely. He's definitely one of the greatest.
All right, brother. Well, listen, I got to take a break, and I'll be talking to you soon.
Billy C., take care.
That's my man, Alex Papali, and doing what he does best with all the blast that he always does. So anyway, hey, listen, I'm going to take a break. When I come back, we're scheduled to have the infamous Joe Santaliquido.
Talkin' Boxing with Billy C. now has official merchandise available on TalkinBoxing.com. T-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, and mugs. And yes, even undergarments. Talkin' Boxing apparel is the perfect gift for the boxing fan in your life. Log on to www.talkinboxing.com. That's TalkinBoxing.com and place your order today.
Join us here for 2 hours as Billy and the gang do what they do best.
Every time I start talking about boxing, a white man got to pull Rocky Marciano out their ass. Rocky Marciano was good, but compared to Joe Louis, Rocky Marciano ain't.
You hit Joe Louis's ass.
Joe Louis was 75 years old when he fought.
Huh?
What? We're supposed to be talking boxing.
It's Talking Boxing with Billy C.
As Billy C sits here in the multi-million-dollar Talkin' Boxing studios, sipping a fine wine before you're even out of bed, you should be thinking, damn, I wish I had a mustache like his. It's the Talkin' Boxing with Billy C show. He's Billy C, and you're not. Sucks to be you.
Now let's dig into our archives and hear a rare interview when Billy C first became the champion of boxing talk radio. Hello, Billy C. As the new champ, can we ask you a few questions?
Why, certainly.
Okay, your fans would like to know how you and your corner have successfully walloped the competition.
We're not ordinary people. We're morons.
Anything else?
I'm a victim of circumstance.
Did your success finally come when you made the show 5 days a week for 2 hours? What do you think?
I'm trying to think, but nothing happens.
Now, please tell the listeners what you've learned from making it this far.
Certainly. If at first you don't succeed, keep on sucking till you do succeed.
Great words of wisdom, Billy C. Keep up the great work as the undisputed People's Champion with your show, Talkin' Boxing with Billy C. Any last words to anyone who's listening?
This is your fault, you bonehead.
And we're back. You are listening to the Talking Boxing with Billy C show, and you're watching us on the Fight Now television channel. And yeah, we just had an extended segment there. We were doing a blast from the past with Jack Johnson, and Alex Papali presented that. But right now, I'd like to present, well, hey, who's more opinionated than Joe Santaliquido?
Tons of athletes that have asthma, and they deal with it, pal. Deal with it. The hell with you, and the hell with you, and the hell with you. Until I see him enter the ring, where there's no jiggle to his wiggle. The man boobs aren't flopping all over the place. That's a joke. And it kind of cracks me up, this trash that they put on pay-per-view.
Joe Santaliquido. And speaking of Joe Santaliquido, he joins us right now. Hey, speaking of man boobs, whatever happened to Chris Arreola? What's he doing these days, man? Are you there, Joe? I guess we lost Joe already. And maybe we'll try and get him back. We'll try him once. We'll try and get him back and see if he's around. Maybe he hung up on us. I don't know, man. But we'll give him a shot right here. But that's his little intro, which has he enjoyed, and well, I guess we can't connect with Joe. So that's okay. We'll move on because I got a lot of boxing news to talk about. I know Dave Murphy is jumping for joy right now. But anyway, in the news, we got an issue here. Guillermo Rigondeaux is a guy that many believe is one of the top junior featherweights in the world. And as a matter of fact, most people think that he is the top junior featherweight in the world. But, there's been a lot of controversy around him outside of the ring. And it has to do with his management and everything else. Well, he's got a manager that he's got signed, or the manager's got papers signed by Rigondeaux, and his name is Gary Hyde. Now, we've heard this before. There's been some problems with Gary Hyde and Guillermo Rigondeaux in the past, and one of the problems is that Gary Hyde has been involved with Rigondeaux since he swam over in the coconut raft, and pretty much helped set up his professional career here in the United States. Now, since then, Rigondeaux's popularity has grown, and there's been a couple of instances where there's been some issues. Well, yesterday there was another one, and a Florida court, which Gary Hyde brought his case in front of, ruled in his favor, and as a result, has stopped Guillermo Rigondeaux from being able to fight on September 15th in Las Vegas on the undercard of the Sergio Martinez-Julio Cesar Chavez fight through a promotional contract that they had with Top Rank. Now, here, it gets a little dicey because the thing is that with Bob Arum and Gary Hyde, after the first time that Rigondeaux and Gary Hyde had an issue, they resolved their problem and they continued to work together. Then you added Top Rank into the picture, and Top Rank basically was, that third person in the mix. Now, Top Rank's contract was a short one, not as long as Gary Hyde's, and had actually expired or will expire prior to the September 15th fight. So what they did was they signed a contract for Guillermo Rigondeaux to fight on the undercard against Robert Marroquin, and they were going to, knowing that Top Rank was not going to be under the promotional contract with Rigondeaux, but they were still negotiating. And the problem is that according to the contract that Gary Hyde and Guillermo Rigondeaux have, Gary Hyde gets to be influential in the decision that's made, like who he fights, where he fights, who he fights for, etc. And at that time, before Rigondeaux signed the papers, Gary Hyde had been negotiating with Golden Boy. So, I mean, the bottom line is he was trying to get a better contract for Rigondeaux and, of course, himself. Now, all of a sudden, Top Rank is like, I don't know nothing, man. I know nothing of it. But here's the bottom line. Rigondeaux is not on that card as of now. Now, whether they go ahead and straighten things out or whatever, Gary Hyde's opinion on this matter was that he had a much more lucrative contract with Golden Boy, and he was trying to present that to Guillermo Rigondeaux, who hastily jumped on board with Top Rank. So we'll have to wait and see what's going on with that. But, this goes back to something that I've said time and time again. When you sign a contract, you got to live up to it, man. You got to live up to it. It's that simple. Speaking of living up to, Andre Berto was granted a license in the state of California yesterday. They had a hearing, and they gave him a license. Now, he's not scheduled to fight yet, but he will be. Now, you know the story. He's been labeled as a juicer, PED. He accused Ortiz for using, performance-enhancing drugs when he beat Berto. He definitely beat Berto. There's no question about that, in my opinion, anyway. And I think everybody else has to admit it. Berto, his corner didn't help him much by yelling all that stuff. Yelling all that stuff in his ears. He probably wasn't hearing anything. But Andre Berto was very vocal about Victor Ortiz using performance-enhancing drugs, and he wanted to be tested for their rematch. Now, Andre Berto had picked up another title and vacated it just so he could make a little more money fighting in that rematch. Then we all know what happens. His A and B sample tested positive, and the end result was that fight never happened. It was canceled. We all saw what ended up happening. Josito Lopez went in and busted up Victor Ortiz's jaw a couple of times, and a couple of places, I should say, and ended up winning the fight. And you fast forward it now, Ortiz and Berto were both sitting home watching Saul Canelo Alvarez fight Josito Lopez. But that's that. My opinion on this whole performance-enhancing drug thing, Lou DiBella says that, we don't understand. It was a trace test. It was this, it was that. You guys jumped all over me for saying that I thought that the IBF did the right thing in terms of, trying to educate themselves. Wherever that education went, whether it was BS or what, I just thought that they made the right move. And the ABC, by getting a standard now, basic, list for fighters to follow, has all put in place to give these guys, the Andre Berto, the four guys, the big four, the Andre Berto, the Enzio Macronelli, the Antonio Tarver, and, of course, Lamont, you dummy, Peterson, a second chance. But here's the thing. Because they were such high-profile fighters, and because they tested positive, they better appreciate this second chance that they're getting. Because if they ever test positive again, I, for one, vote for a lifetime ban for these four fighters. Lifetime. They're done. Their boxing career is over. End of story. I think that they get the pass here only because there was nothing formally in place. It is now. So there's no room for error. So Andre Berto better quietly get his license in California, fight a fight or two there, and then maybe he'll be back in Vegas. We'll have to wait and see. But Andre Berto, licensed in California. Be looking forward to seeing his return to the ring. 28 wins, 1 loss, 22 come by knockout. And we'll see where he goes from here. Those are two big things that happened in the sport of boxing yesterday. Another thing was the press conference between Randall Bailey and Devon Alexander. And they're both, it's taking place September 8th. It's in Las Vegas. It's, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Wait, what do you think, Randall? I'm going to do this. He's going to be better. And what are you going to do, Devon? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Bottom line is, all they talk about with Randall Bailey is his power in his right hand. And Randall Bailey said, and I quote, when it lands, he's talking about his right hand, it's destructive. Doesn't matter how fast Devon is, he'll get hit. And every fight he gets hit with right hands, I'm going to hit him with mine. He says when somebody asked him about his punching power, pretty much one punch power, he says, I'm pretty much alone out there. I'm the only one that can do that. Well, I think he's putting a lot of stock in his one-punch knockout power. Devon Alexander said the best. He says all he's got to do with that right hand is try to land it. And I agree with Devon. And he says all I got to do is follow my game plan. Now, I don't know what Devon Alexander's game plan is in this fight, but I tell you what it would be if I was in charge of working with Devon Alexander. I would tell him to just box and move, circle. Box him, keep moving, box, keep moving, and he'll win. Because if you've watched any of Bailey's fights, he does one thing. He headhunts. And, for the times that he's won, which is more often than not, he's finally caught up with a fighter. But Devon Alexander can dance for 12 rounds. He can move for 12 rounds. He could jab for 12 rounds. The punching speed, the hand speed between these two fighters is like night and day. Night and day. There's just no comparison with the two. And this is not going to be an exciting fight. It's going to be a chase fight. Randall Bailey's going to chase Devon Alexander all around the ring. and Devon Alexander is going to pop shot him. He's going to pick his shots. He's going to land them here, get out of harm's way, land a couple more there, get out of harm's way. And for the most part, he's going to avoid the knockout punch. Devon Alexander is going to win this fight. It's the worst opponent that Randall Bailey could have picked. You know, he was better off picking a faster guy, a guy that's got some hand speed but maybe a little slower, like Zab Judah. Zab Judah would have been a better matchup for him, you know, I think. But you know, whatever. You know, that would have been one. You know, let's see. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at, according to the latest Billy C. boxing rankings. You know, what do we think here? Well, Zab Judah would have had to obviously come up in weight since he's still at junior welterweight, but Randall Bailey was at junior welterweight for a while. But in the currently, you know, all those guys, you know, the funny thing about it, Devon Alexander is rated, according to our rankings, above Randall Bailey. You know, any of the other guys, you know, Paulie Malignaggi, Berto, Kell Brook, you know, I think maybe Randall Bailey catches up with Paulie. I know he's got a lot of hand speed and foot movement, but you know, I don't like the style matchup here for Randall Bailey. I mean, we knew that this title reign was going to be short lived, so but good luck. You know, I think it's going to be a one-sided fight, and Devon Alexander is going to walk away with the W. You know, and Murphy, I think, agrees with me. He says, I don't think it's going to be a good fight either. Devon is going to win. He says he's going to have enough fight. He's going to have enough rounds in the bank by the 6th or 7th round. And, you know, so they're agreeing with me. The thing that, you know, I'm getting a lot of disagreement with is my man Coach. Coach isn't impressed with Jack Johnson. Didn't impress. He's not impressed with Jack Johnson, so I'm shocked. Coach knows the stuff. He's been cleaning up with the trivia questions, but doesn't know about Jack Johnson. Doesn't like Jack Johnson, but anyway. Jose Acuna will be returning to the ring on September 22nd. We'll see what happens there. It's going to be fighting in California. So, hey, see if his O stays intact. And, you know, we were talking about it the other day, and I don't know who said it, but somebody straightened me out. You know, the WBA is trying to change the way their scoring is. And I think that it's ridiculous. I mean, really, it is. You know, a half point. You know, their whole attitude here is that they feel that they don't want any controversial decisions. Well, how does a half point change that? How does 11 rounds change that? I mean, you know, are you saying that there's no more even rounds? I mean, is that what the half point is supposed to be for? You know, I mean, you know, what bothers me the most isn't really the rules. I mean, it really isn't. It really isn't. What bothers me is the separation. I mean, you know, you got the WBA, and you got the WBC, and Lord knows how many other sanctioning bodies we have. We do know that we have too many, but you know, my question is this: you know, why are we breaking the sport up here? You know, why is the WBA trying to, you know, separate themselves? Why does the WBC try to separate themselves? No, I know the answer, because they're trying to get more fighters to fight for their belts, and they're trying to get their fangs, their claws into the sport a little more. But that's the problem with the sport of boxing. You know, the NFL football is probably, well, I know in the States, it's the most successful professional sports league in the United States, and I believe on the planet, personally, because there's one reason why, really. There's one word. If someone said, well, give me one word why, one word, I would say continuity. continuity. And that word could be spread across every aspect of the game. The teams have a salary cap, which keeps the money spending on an even playing field. That's continuity, right? So the players are kind of making the same amount of money. There's continuity there. The rules are the same. There are divisions. Yes, there's division champions. So there is room for sub-champions, There is room there, but there's continuity. There's an order. There's a hierarchy. That's what boxing needs. We don't need the WBA having a scoring system that's defined like the way they suggest and that their championship fights are 11 rounds. We don't want the WBC to have a new scoring system that they're suggesting. And so when the fighter goes into to the WBC belt to fight for a WBC belt, the rules are one way. And they go in to fight for a WBA belt, and the rules are another way. They fight for the IBO belt or the IBF belt or the Uchiachi belt or whatever, and all the rules are different. I mean, that's excuses. That's material for an excuse. I forgot that they were only fighting 11 rounds. Our game plan was to not fight at all for 11 rounds and come out and knock them out in the 12th. That's why we lost. I could just hear it now. What boxing needs is continuity. And it starts with the rules. We try to put things in place to make the rules even. We try to put organizations in place that help the sport, like the ABC. I support the ABC. I just wish it wasn't voluntary. I wish that it was a requirement. If you're a commission in New York, if you're a commission in the United States, you need to be part of the ABC. Now, most of them, I think all of them actually belong to it, but I think it should be a requirement. I also think that commissions like the New York State Athletic Commission need to be controlled. This is a power-hungry group of people in the New York State Athletic Commission that have single-handedly ruined the sport of boxing in the state of New York. And I speak for the state of New York because I live here. There's other states that need some help. Maybe not as much as New York because, maybe they're not as corrupt as the New York Commission is. But, the bottom line is, you need quality people that run boxing commissions. Just like you have quality people running baseball, quality people that are running football. There are people that know football. There are people that know baseball or hockey or basketball or soccer. In boxing, you don't need that. They appoint people to run. So the commission, you may have all the boxing knowledge in the world as your trainer and your fighters and promoters and everything else. They may be all the knowledge that you can find in the sport of boxing, but yet the guy making the decision for a fight, owns a bar. Or dropped out of high school or something. I don't know. I don't know if that's the case with anybody in any commission, but I'm just using that as an example. Made a contribution to the current governmental staff, so to speak, in their state. So now all of a sudden they're appointed in the boxing commission. Or worse. A person that's appointed in a commission that doesn't like boxing or doesn't want to support it, and then you end up with, just a big hassle. Now you look at a state, again, I'm going to take my state, New York, and we happen to have, the best medical requirements because they look out for the safety of the fighter. And then there's other states that virtually have no medical requirements. There needs to be a happy medium. We need to look out for the safety of the fighters and, of course, the fans. And then, from that point on, you need to have integrity. And that's something that some commissions don't have and definitely some sanctioning bodies don't have. And until we get this continuity with all the aspects of the sport of boxing, continuity with the rules, continuity with the commissions, continuity with the medical exams, continuity with the thought process of who gets shots at what titles and where these values come. Until the continuity is there across the board, we're still going to have issues with this sport. Apparently, speaking of WBA, they have granted some permission for that fight to take place between Emilio Marino and Abner Mares. So we will see what happens there. It's scheduled to take place October 13th, and we don't know where yet. So stay tuned for that. Two other things I wanted to make mention. In Colorado, on September 1st, is going to be a pretty decent event. It's a throwback title, at least the way I look at it. The card is being billed Colorado versus New Mexico, and it's built. The card is built upon, fighters from Colorado fighting fighters from New Mexico. Here's the best part: the main event is a female fight, and it's in the flyweight division. And Chantel Cordova, who has been out of the ring for almost a year. She's got a record of 9 wins, 3 losses, and a draw, with 3 of her wins coming by knockout. And she's from Colorado. Now, the girl she's fighting, her opponent, is out of New Mexico. Her name is Brandy Montoya. Now, Brandy has got a record of 3-2. She's got no knockouts. I've seen Brandy fight a couple of times. She started her career 0-2. She's learned how to fight. This girl has a lot of energy. She's cute as a button. And she lands a lot of fights, a lot of punches in her fights. Let me tell you something. I know it's an obscure fight card. I know that these aren't world-known fighters. I know that they're in the female division. I know it's in Colorado. But here's the thing. This is a good matchup. And I like the way they're doing this card. This is a throwback type of a card. Colorado versus New Mexico. I love it. I love it. And I wish more people would do that. More promoters would do that. So make sure you mark that one down. I think that these are going to be. I think that particular fight's going to be a good one. So one other thing, they've scheduled a fight that's going to take place between Hugo Ruiz, who's the interim champion in the bantamweight division for the WBA, and their regular champion, Koki Kamada, is going to be taking place. Yep, it's going to be taking place in either October or November of this year. So we'll be looking forward to that because that is going to be a good one. And finally, the WBA will have one champion, right? And they'll probably find someone else to give an interim title to because it's what they do.
Wake up. It's time for the... It's too early for a trivia question.
All righty. Today's It's Too Early for a Trivia Question is being brought to us by Gleason's Gym. Check it out, man. They got all kinds of good stuff going on there. And the best thing to do is check out their website, www.BillyCBoxing.com. You go to our website, and you can't miss Gleason's banner right there. That's the easiest way. Click it, and you'll be directed. You can also call them, 718-797-2872. Tell them Billy C. sent you. Gleason's Gym in Brooklyn, New York. Make sure you tell them Billy C. sent you and that you want the Billy C. discount on whatever you're buying there. Tickets, a membership, whatever. 718-797-2872, Gleason's Gym. All right, on the line today for our It's Too Early for a Trivia question is your very own copy of the Title Bout Championship computer game. That's right. This game is worth about $40. It's a simulation game. You can take Jack Johnson and fight him against Vladimir Klitschko and set up what kind of condition they're in, what the conditions of the fight's in, and all that stuff, and let the computer run it 1,000 times and see who they pick to win. It's a great game. For all the information about the Title Bout Championship computer game, find it on the website, www.BillyCBoxing.com. Left-hand side, you see a banner. Click it for Title Bout, and it'll give you the info. A copy of this is yours if you're the first one to get this question right, which we thought was going to be fairly easy. Who was known as Blue Eyes? Who was known as Blue Eyes? If you know that answer, email me, Billy@TalkinBoxing. That's TalkinBoxing.com. And if you're the first one to get it right, you're going to win that Title Bout game. Email me, Billy@TalkinBoxing, TalkinBoxing.com.
This day in boxing history.
And finally, this day in boxing history is being brought to us by Campanaro and Tomkovich. That's right. If you're looking for a lawyer, use the ones that keep my ass out of trouble, and that is Campanaro and Tomkovich. Give them a call today, 845-221-4099. That's 845-221-4099. Let Campanaro and Tomkovich knock out your legal problem. 845-221-4099. And don't forget, this show is always being brought to you by Ringside, the best in boxing. Check them out, ringside.com, for all your boxing equipment needs. All right, on this day, August 22nd in 1987, BillyCBoxing Hall of Famer and close friend of mine, Marlon Starling, knocks out Mark Breland in the 11th round to win the WBA World Welterweight title, and it took place on this day, August 22nd in 1987, in Columbia, South Carolina. Hey, man, I got one more thing to say. Make sure you tune in tomorrow morning, same bat time, same bat channel. That's right, tune in on the Fight Now channel, because that's the only place you're going to get the show tomorrow and Friday. For all the information about Fight Now, visit their website, www.fightnow.com. See you all tomorrow on Fight Now, or Monday, right here on BillyCBoxing.com. Ciao, baby.